Good evening, everyone. It's late, so I think you've been here before, so I'm going to give you a list of. I don't think you've been to one of the classes, but what do you have for? No, so welcome. I'll give you a sheet. What else has? Good. Okay, where are we? We are in Roman numeral 3, letter C. Yes? Okay. We did Shavuot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We also did you remember Purim Katan in letter number 8? We talked. Okay, so today was Purim Katan. Okay.
What happened?
Purim Katan. Purim Katan. So, anyone remember? Want to say?
Sure.
Good. Good.
Sure.
That's
So
good.
it was in a Jewish leap year, there's a second Adar, and then on the day of, that would have been Purim if there was only one, then there's Purim Katan.
How do we celebrate Purim Katan? Do we read the Megillah today?
No.
Correct, right. We really don't really celebrate it. We just, we refrain from anything, there's no positive celebration, but we don't do anything like sad today. There's no, if there were, God forbid, a funeral today, there'd be no eulogies, you're not allowed to fast, so it's sort of like a day where you can't do anything sad. So that's really the only echo of or what you call an echo when it comes before, but it's the only echo of Purim in a month. I read a very brief essay today, sort of different ways of conceptualizing it, why we even celebrate it. It seems that, because in the Talmud already it says, it seems in the Talmud there's a debate about when there are two Adars, do we celebrate Purim in the first one or in the second one? And we conclude we celebrate Purim in the second one, but the Talmud says both Purim days, both the 14th of the first Adar and the 14th of the second Adar, both days we don't fast, we don't have eulogies, and so the question is why. And so one way to understand it is just that in some essential way, like they're both days are really Purim, both days should be celebrated, but we only celebrate Purim once. So you have to pick one, we pick the second. But in some level, this is also Purim today, and so we don't have we don't allow sort of open mourning in this way. So I don't know, you can make it that way you will. It's not a very important day, not a very important event in the yearly calendar, but since today is, I guess today was the 14th of Adar, and then tonight is the 15th of Adar. So I thought I'd mention it since it is in fact Purim Katan. Because it's the 15th of Adar, you know what else that means on the Jewish calendar? So there's the 15th, the Ides of Adar, what does that mean, the 15th of the month? What happens on the 15th of the month, 15th of every month? Full moon. 15th, yeah, so actually I was just thinking as we walked over, I could see. So anyway you leave, you can see the great big moon. Okay, so the lunar, the Hebrew calendar, the first of the month is when the moon is just beginning, and then the 15th in the middle of the month it's full, and then it goes away. All right. I think we already talked about Ochel Nefesh, the fact that Yom Tov, we finished Shavuot, right? Okay, good. So I think we're done with the joy. So we're done with the joy celebration. Go on to letter D. Go, Andrea. Go on to letter D. So the fast days. So these fast days are listed here in order that they occur in the calendar. That's not necessarily the best way to understand them. So we're going to do these fast days, not in order that they appear here, which is the order that they occur in the year. We're going to do it conceptually, okay? So basically there are basically 6 fast days, and the way to remember them is the black and the white, the man, the woman, the long and the short. Okay, that's the way to remember all the 6 fast days. And plus there's the Tag B'chorim, which is not really a fast day. Okay, number 5. Okay, but let's go through. So the black and the white. The white refers to Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is the only one of these is an actual biblical holiday. It's one of the holidays in the Torah, and it is a full fast day. The fast day begins. It's a 25-hour fast, 25-hour holiday. No malach. It's a day without. It's like Shabbat, so there's no travel, no transit, no use of electricity, no writing, no cooking, and unlike the other Yom Tovim, there's none of the leniencies for Yom Tov. So you can't carry, you can't cook. So it's like Shabbat in that sense, even though it can occur on a weekday. And in addition to the restrictions on work, like all the other holidays, on Yom Kippur, in addition there is a prohibition. There are 5, called the 5 inuim, the 5 afflictions. The Torah says you shall afflict yourself on that day. So what does that mean? It means no eating and drinking, no wearing of shoes, no sexual intimacy, no washing, and no anointing. Those are the 5. In terms of, so let's go through them all. In terms of eating and drinking, no eating and drinking, not even water. I mean, some religions, when they fast, they drink water. This is like a full fast day, full 25 hours. If you have medical necessity to eat, then there are ways in which one can consume less than the minimal volume, sort of to trigger the prohibition, and in that way get the needed hydration or nutrition that one needs medically. Or if it's a really medical need, obviously just eat and drink normally, if that's what's medically indicated. But depending on the circumstances, you might see if it's possible to avoid breaking the fast entirely by sipping, like a few ounces of water every 6 minutes for a few hours in the morning and a few hours in the afternoon. And in that way, you get the hydration you need to stave off whatever the particular concern is. And eating is the same. You can eat food and drink don't combine to make the same minimal. There's a minimal volume of drink. There's a minimal volume of food, and they don't combine. So you can have like a few ounces of cracker and a few ounces of liquid every, let's say, 6 minutes. If you can, but if you do that, that's not breaking. That's not the severe violation of the fast. That's sort of below the threshold. Every mitzvah and every prohibition in the Torah has a minimal threshold. And we say that even below the minimal threshold is still forbidden, but there's no punishment for it, and it sort of seems to be less severe. And I don't know, I guess if some of you have fasted before, I guess probably all of you have fasted before Yom Kippur, so the trick is to start hydrating early. If you use caffeine, you start weaning yourself off way in advance, like a week or two. You don't?
I don't do anything.
You go cold turkey? It doesn't.
I mean,
I say that.
I'm everything's mental to me. I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm not saying it's not hard.
I have pretty serious withdrawal symptoms if I don't start weaning myself off caffeine.
Yeah.
At least a week before.
Yeah. Maybe I should. I don't know.
I recommend it. You may have a better Yom Kippur. In the first year that I had
I just hallucinate.
Yes, that's not the plan. That's not us, so you don't want that. No, just okay, so eating and drinking. Next, I'm going to the order. Wearing shoes. So.
Okay, I'm sorry, but what's the shoes?
What's the shoes? So what's the question? Like what?
Why are we not wearing shoes on Yom Kippur, or why we're not supposed to?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's sort of understood to be like that's why are we afflicting ourselves altogether? It's about.
You're not supposed to feel comfortable.
Yeah, not supposed to feel comfortable. It's about. Sean, we have a fun meeting. Yeah. I think it's.
Didn't it come around like in the Middle Ages and people just didn't wear? That's where it started.
It's much older. No, it's much older than the Middle Ages. It's much older than that, but I think.
Because it's the leather shoes that we would.
Well,
oh, sorry. Yeah.
It says Milat said wearing shoes. Period.
Okay.
And I think that it's older than the Middle Ages. It's from antiquity.
Okay.
But I think you're onto something. I think sort of wearing shoes was not like probably a lot of people in the ancient world went barefoot a lot of the time. wearing shoes was considered something that was like luxurious, a way to, be delicate and care for your body. On a day when you're afflicting your body, wearing shoes would be something you would do without. If it's in a place where it's dangerous to go barefoot, you are allowed to wear shoes. So if it's muddy and broken glass and rusty nails in the street, you can wear shoes, and then you take them off when you come inside. At some point, in the Middle Ages, after the Middle Ages really, the understanding developed that there were certain types of shoes that didn't fall under the rubric of this prohibition, like shoes that weren't really made of leather, which were like real shoes, and those didn't count. There's been some pushback on that, even in recent years, that like some of those non-leather shoes are actually extremely comfortable, and you can wear them any normal day, and that shouldn't really be a excuse from the prohibition to wear like Crocs, whatever. So the counter argument, no, like somehow definitionally leather shoes are like real shoes. That's what most shoes are made of, and even if other shoes are comfortable, you're still like not dressed in like a normal way that you would. Like it is kind of ridiculous to see people coming to shul on Yom Kippur wearing really nice, like their beautiful holiday outfits, and their Crocs, right? So there is like it does look different, right? I don't know. I think a nice thing to do is just to actually like be barefoot when you can, and not be as concerned about what type of shoe you're wearing when it's unsafe to be barefoot. That's like that's like a nice thing to try. I once had a pair of Converse. They weren't really Converse. They were like some like cheap knockoff Converse, and like every like pebble I could feel, in my foot. So very. So I think in our communities, most people wear some sort of sneaker or flip-flops or Crocs or something like that, and they're sort of lenient in that regard. But the essential prohibition is wearing shoes altogether, which has come to mean in most of our communities leather shoes. Okay? So, sexual intimacy, that means I think that extends to like all forms of physical intimacy. Though there's a dispute among the Achronim, among the 16th century, 17th century commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch about whether or not that extends to like sort of non-sexual, physical, affectionate intimacy, or not intimacy, physical affection that isn't sexual and isn't intimate during the day. Maybe that's only prohibited at night. And so I probably forget who says what, but two great achronim. One says even during the day, that restriction applies, so you wouldn't, holding hands or whatever, would fall into that rubric, or a hug, would be even during the day. And the other opinion is lenient to that, and you can understand why, right? Like related to day or in public, Third, washing. So washing the prohibition against washing in Kippur only applies to washing done for pleasure. But washing done to remove dirt is permitted. So if you get mud on you, or if you like use the toilet and you can be hygienic and you can be clean, you can wash to remove like something that like soils your hands, or whatever you don't get dirty. But just washing, for the fun of it, that's prohibited on Yom Kippur. And anointing, it's sort of similar, some sort of medical anointing that would be not fall into that category, but like anointing, I don't know exactly what that means, but perfume maybe, or some type of special oils that would fall into that prohibition. It was pointed out to me once, or Saul Berman made this point, I think it's quite apt. Every time there's a prohibition in the Torah that's temporary, it's not because the thing is bad, it's because we're supposed to pause from that thing so that we can re-engage with it with greater intention and focus and appropriate motives, etc. So I think that's true for like we don't work on Shabbat. It's not because working is bad. No, like all those things that we don't do on Shabbat, we are supposed to do during the week. But we pause for 25 hours and then we re-engage with the physical world, with our creative capacity after Shabbat with greater orientation, focus, and in a better way. And so we don't eat, drink, sexual intimacy, wear shoes, etc. on Yom Kippur, not because any of those things are wrong, not because our body is being taken care of, and is bad, but because we pause from focusing on our bodies, we pause from things that give pleasure to our bodies and sustain them for 25 hours so that we can re-engage with all of those things afterwards with greater focus and intentionality and with a different mindset. I think that's quite true, and you see this, I think, in Yom Kippur as well.
We missed one thing on Yom Kippur, which is Kapolot. I don't know if we talked about it.
We did not talk about it, and we're not done yet, so I'll make a little note since you...
We,
Yeah?
just to add, like, the, the point of doing all those things, like, or maybe it's, I don't know if it's like a Kabbalistic idea, but I think pretty general, it's like we're supposed to be like the angels, right? Like we're supposed to elevate.
So a theme of Yom Kippur, there is an angelic theme of Yom Kippur, wearing white and again sort of separating, like not being, like really neglecting our bodies for the day. It is sort of really focusing on the spiritual over the physical. I think that is true. And so you can see, so you can see that, like, I mean, I think this is in contrast to, that's so, the other, like, 25-hour fast in the Jewish calendar, Tisha B'Av, which is a mournful day, and, like, it's, Tisha B'Av, it's like we're too sad, how could we eat, because we're so sad. And Yom Kippur, how could we eat, because we're, basking in God's presence. It's a day of tremendous intimacy with God, so how could we even think about anything else? That would be maybe the contrast. That's definitely a theme of the liturgy, although we also, it's one of the most beautiful poems that we say in the Yom Kippur liturgy is this, it compares the angels praising God and our own feeble, mortal, weak prayers and how God prefers ours. So it's like, that's, which I think is also sort of a humanistic holiday as well. So Yom Kippur, day of atonement, in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, there were the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, would go into the Kodesh Kodashim, the Holy of Holies in the temple, and in there would earn atonement for the entire nation. We have to do it ourselves now. Atonement is a really interesting concept. It's like, it's...
Forgiven.
Yeah, it's similar to, or it's an idea that is relevant or associated with the theme of tshuva, repentance, but is really somewhat different. Repentance is about changing oneself and reforming who one is and how one acts, how one is in the world. Atonement is almost like this magical, like the slate is wiped clean. Which is really, really interesting how that works or why that works. But that seems to be what the day is about. But it's also understood to be a day of judgment, and so there's a joy. It's a joyful day because we're promised by the Torah that we earn atonement on that day, but it's also a frightening day because it's a day of judgment and self-judgment and judgment by God. Day of intimacy, God is present but also fear and awe because God is present and as a judge. And so that all of those sort of stances are all present in the liturgy, and those are emotions that are kind of expressed during the day. It's a very long prayer service, a lot because of the solemnity and the awe and the importance of the day, a lot of things were added to the prayers for Yom Kippur over the centuries. And so we have a special prayer book just for Yom Kippur, just for Rosh Hashanah, because so many extra poems and additions have kind of accrued to the service over the centuries. Kapparot is a ritual that some people practice the day before Yom Kippur. It's a chicken is sort of basically it's donated to slaughtered and donated to charity, and but in merit of sort of atonement. It's a very, very controversial ritual. I think most of the great halachic scholars condemn the practice because the risk was two risks. One sort of a ritual risk, and one is a religious risk. The ritual risk is that it looks a little bit like one's doing a sacrifice, and we only do sacrifices in the Beit HaMikdash. And the ritualized killing of the chicken, over which one says these declarations, looks very similar to, like somebody offering like a korban like outside of the Beit HaMikdash. Which is a pretty severe violation. So people stay away from this practice for that reason alone. The other reason why it's controversial is because people might think it works, and meaning they may think that you get atonement by saying some words over a chicken, rather than through repentance, right? Which is a much harder, thing to do. So that's another reason why people were opposed to it. Others have tried to say, instead of the chicken, use money instead, say that recite the Declaration of Money, the money's given to tzedakah, how could, it's no efficient way to get all these chickens to people who need them anyway, and most of the chickens are slaughtered and then just discarded, which is kind of not a nice thing. So I've never done it, it's not been a practice I've ever really taken up, and I think I find the arguments against it very persuasive, but if it's something, you may see it out there in the world, and if it's something that is meaningful to you and your family and your communities, I'm not gonna tell you not to do it today.
Do you swing it when it's alive?
Yeah, a little swinging. I think it's more like sort of like you can find it on YouTube. You can find pictures. You sort of just go like that.
They do it mostly for money.
You've seen the money.
Well, back in the days, yes, but I can tell you that in Israel it's still popular.
Yeah, with the chickens.
The chickens?
Yeah, and also in Brooklyn, not just in Israel. I'm sure. Andrea.
Did anyone just do like a fake chicken just to?
No. Do you
So
money?
if I've ever seen a photo, it's like
That's
that was a
real
real.
Oh, that's a real
I've
chicken.
seen pictures
That's a real
of
chicken.
like local rabbi. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm sure we'll do it.
So it's like this.
Yeah.
For some reason, when we learned about it in
You imagine
college,
somebody like swinging
I
like this?
imagined someone
that's
holding a
something,
chicken by the
yeah.
leg and like
No.
swinging it around.
Yeah, that's what I
It's a
thought
tradition,
too.
it's not a mitzvah or anything like that.
No. And no, they don't swing. They don't swing. They wave. They
We
don't.
call it the chicken. We always call it the chicken swing.
One other question,
Mhm.
the only fast day that will stay after the third temple and the Messiah will be Yom Kippur, is that correct?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
I think it's so cold.
No. That's not a fast. He's not a fast day. The morning ones won't be observed. So Kippur, that makes sense. That makes sense to me, right? The fast of morning. The Nevi'im, the prophets say the morning fast will be turned into holidays, and Yom Kippur is in the Torah, so that has to be forever. That makes sense.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was saying this. We were still going to have, we're still going to have the feast of Sukkot when Mashiach.
I have all the feasts. I mean, it depends what you think. I mean, that's according to. There are different opinions on what we'll talk. We'll get to that. There are different opinions in Jewish tradition of what is supposed to be different when Mashiach comes. According to Maimonides, who wrote about this most comprehensively, very little will be different when Mashiach comes. The only difference between Mashiach and the time without Mashiach is that the Jewish people have sovereignty, and that's the only difference. And so, for the importance for Maimonides that the Torah is eternal. That's a very important principle of his. Every mitzvah on the Torah is forever. So there will be very little will be different. And the whole point of Mashiach for Maimonides is that we have sovereignty and therefore the peace and tranquility to be able to study philosophy and science and metaphysics and these things that enable one to earn one's place in the world to come. So that's his messianic vision. He writes it out much more poetically than I just said, so it's worth reading. His great Maimonides, his magnum opus is the Mishnah Torah. He wrote this 14-volume book trying to summarize, and more than summarize, like rewrite and organize and present in a clear, presentable, coherent, organized, that would already holistic way, all of Jewish tradition that's not in the Tanakh, that's not part of Scripture. So he says all you need now is like this book and a Tanakh, Hebrew Bible and this new book I wrote. And that's all you need. You want to replace the Talmud because you waste a lot of time learning Talmud. If you want to, if the whole point is that you know what to do, the Talmud is a very inefficient way to do that because everything doesn't tell you what the answer is to the questions that it discusses. It's just an argument and discussion of every topic without clear answers. And Maimonides thought, look, we need to just know what to do so we can do it, that we can spend most of our time studying philosophy and physics and science, and that's how we earn the world to come, by thinking and contemplating these things. So the mitzvot are just means practical guidance so we can have an ordered society so that everyone has the tranquility and the ability to engage in those types of contemplation. But anyway, and also, each of those 14 books of his magnum opus, each of the 14 books ends in a beautifully poetic way. He wrote, it's a law code, but it's also a book of philosophy, and it's also a book of beautiful, beautiful artistry and linguistic beauty. And you see this throughout. It's beautifully organized. You have a beautiful, beautiful, rabbinic Hebrew. It's, it's like Mishnaic Hebrew, perfect Mishnaic Hebrew. So how Maimonides writing in, the Middle Ages in Egypt was able to write beautiful, 2nd century Hebrew. And each of the 14 books in particular, he ends in, he sort of waxes poetic and really beautiful. So if you ever want a little project, you can read the last, section of each of those 14 books. They stand alone. Really, really beautiful. Okay, so that's Yom Kippur. So it's a Yom Tov. We light candles before, just like every other Yom Tov. There's no festive meal because you don't eat, but otherwise it's Yom Tov, so you wear nice clothes and you don't work, or et cetera, et cetera. And also we have these restrictions of fasting, and also in the service in the synagogue is dramatic and beautiful and long and different. Even if you're the weekday, the week in, week out, the service becomes familiar to you. Yom Kippur can be a bit daunting, a bit of a challenge. So that's Yom Kippur is the only biblical mitzvah. The other fasts are fasts of mourning, mourning for the temple. And so just to go with the black and the white. So the white is Yom Kippur, the black is Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is the anniversary of the day when the 9th of Av, that's when the first temple was destroyed, more or less. That's when the second temple was destroyed, more or less. That's when many other calamities in Jewish history took place. Even before, the rabbis associate Tisha B'Av with the night when the spies came back from the land of Israel and said, it's too hard, we can't go there, and everyone cried. And that's when we were punished, that we spent 40 years in the desert before entering the land of Israel. The rabbis imagined God saying, you're crying now for nothing, I'll give you a reason to cry on this night, every year. And we do, we gather in the synagogue at night of the 9th of Av, and we cry, we read the Book of Lamentations, and we have special poetic liturgical dirges called keynotes that are read at night, and then also during the day.
What about fasting? Do we fast that
So
day?
Tisha B'Av these are all fast days, yes. So Tisha B'Av is also a 25-hour fast day, similar to Yom Kippur. A little bit more lenient because it's rabbinic, it's not biblical, but similar.
But it's longer, so it's hard.
Longer. It's not longer. It's 25 hours.
Or it's longer during the day.
It's more in the northern hemisphere.
It's hotter.
Right.
It's hotter.
It's hotter usually. Yeah. So yeah, that's true. 25 hours. Same 25 hours. I don't know. It can be Yom Kippur, so you're on your feet more. You're in shul. You're doing stuff which can be tiring, but can also give you some adrenaline and some energy and stuff. So that's
So it's only rabbinic, meaning that only after the destruction of the second temple did it become that.
No. The
that
first, no.
Sorry.
It's rabbinic in that it's not a mitzvah in the Torah, in the 5 books of Moses, because that was that was the Torah. Right?
Right.
The 613 mitzvot, the D'oraita mitzvot, are traced to things in the Torah itself, which was hundreds of years before the Beit HaMikdash was even built, let alone destroyed. So in that sense, it's rabbinic, even though technically the rabbinic period was after, was after. It's rabbinic in an anachronistic way because the rabbis, with the title rabbi, the rabbinic period really begins in earnest after the destruction of the Second Temple. But post Torah legislation, we call it rabbinic. It's Rabbanan. Is that?
Yeah. So people were fasting even before the destruction of the Second Temple on Tisha B'Av, or is that not? I mean.
Well, when?
I'm just curious.
Well, there depends. There's let's say they started fasting after the destruction of the First Temple.
Right. Yeah.
So they fasted on Tisha B'Av, let's say every year after the First Temple was destroyed in 586 BCE. 70 years later, they built the Second Temple.
Right.
So the question
maybe
is,
they stopped.
so that's a question, and that's
yeah.
questions discussed actually that's in Zechariah, right? They asked the prophets in the time of the early Second Temple, so should we continue to fast now or not? And so that's a matter of some question. But and then when they did, they certainly started fasting again after the Second Temple was destroyed in the year 70 of the Common Era. Okay.
Yeah. Was anybody at least there's a silver lining? Now there's no question. We have to.
We can't argue as much about it.
And the day became the day of other bad things that happened are mourned on Tisha B'Av, and they don't necessarily whenever something bad happens, do we give it its own day to mourn, or just throw it into Tisha B'Av? And here and there in Jewish history, there are communities that had specific days that they mourned and they fasted, and the terrible things that happen in those communities, but the more common trend is throw everything into Tisha B'Av. And that's
There's
all
a
the bad things.
controversy in Israel with Yom HaShoah and Tisha B'Av among the ultra-Orthodox. Like they
And
don't
that's,
know.
yeah, I mean, that was the modern iteration of this was whether there should be a separate day to mourn the Holocaust, and if so, what day that should be.
Right.
And there were a number of different suggestions, and a number of different arguments that were made, and so.
I know there's a response. Now it's considered like very poor taste to not at least recognize Yom HaShoah in Israel, but like the ultra-Orthodox would rather, like their response has been like, well, we mourn on Tisha B'Av.
And other ways too.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, there are a lot of, I mean, it's complicated. I mean, not just, I guess the argument, and it wasn't just, I mean, Justice Soloveitchik was against a separate day of mourning the Holocaust as well. It wasn't such an ultra-Orthodox thing. And the arguments he made were several. One, he felt there's no need to write additional keynote, additional liturgy for the Holocaust, because if you actually read the ancient ones, the medieval ones, everything, it's all there anyway. And if you see, we have his published now, his notes, his commentary on he would teach all day. He would spend all day at Tisha B'Av teaching, going through the keynote, the dirges, and teaching them, explaining them, and he would find allusions to things that happened in the Holocaust. I speak very movingly about this cousin of his was murdered, and this thing that happened in this Jewish community, but the allusions were all from the keynote written 1,000 years ago. In other words, he would find echoes and resonances to more modern events in things that happened long ago. Religiously, the idea is, all the bad things that happen to us all kind of stem from the same cause or the same root ideas. Also, in reference to one of the keynote that was written after the First Crusades were a terrible, really disaster for the Jews in Europe. That was the Jewish communities in the Rhineland were destroyed significantly or in part during the First Crusade. The armies made their way across Europe on their way to the Middle East, and when we have dirges that we recite on Tisha B'Av commemorating the First Crusades and the communities that were destroyed in the First Crusade. There's a line, one of those poems that says, but we can't mourn on every, we don't want to add days of mourning to the calendar because our calendar would be filled. If every time something bad happened we have a day of mourning, we'd have only days of mourning in our calendar. So since we can't do that, we'll just throw it into Tisha B'Av. And that was also a reason, when would you mourn the Holocaust? Every day, there was no day. This was a calamity that took place over a period of years, every single day. Thousands and thousands of people were murdered. How could you pick one day anyway? So throw it all into Tisha B'Av, otherwise you'll be mourning every day. The other piece is that the Holocaust in early Israel was sort of the ethos of the state. The early years was very Yom HaShoah, the Holocaust Commemoration Day, that as established by the government of Israel in 1950, was set as the anniversary of the start of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, which was part of a kind of early Zionist or early state idea of this is a story from the Holocaust we can be proud of. Everything else is sort of embarrassing to us, that all these people didn't fight back and didn't resist, but we can focus on those who fought and those who resisted in this way, and that's what we can commemorate, and that's the day that will. So it's called the Day of Holocaust Commemoration and the Heroes Commemoration. That's the official name of the day, and that was a big part of its agenda in the early years. I think over time people have realized how unfair and problematic that attitude is. It's also during Nisan, which is a month that we generally don't mourn. So there's a lot of complicated, that's part of the controversy. So it still comes. It's gonna anyway. Yeah.
I'm sorry. When is the Holocaust Day?
So the day he was referring to is in the spring. It's
Nisan.
in Nisan, yeah.
What?
Not necessarily April. It's this year. It'll be in May. It's sometime in May this year. It's when it's a week or so after Pesach.
Oh, just about a week after Pesach.
Also, the 10th of Tevet, another one of these fast days, was established by the Rabbi as the day of mourning the Holocaust. Also, that was the day they're supposed to. That's called the Day of General Kaddish. That if you have a relative who died, you don't know when, you say Kaddish for them on Asar B'Tevet. That was also another. So, It's a little bit of a digression, sorry about that. But, okay. Tisha B'Av is preceded 3 weeks earlier by the 17th of Tammuz. 17th of Tammuz is the day when the Romans breached the walls of Jerusalem, so the preface to the destruction of the temple, and it's also the day when other bad things happened in Jewish history, biblical history, and post-biblical history, other bad things happened, and so that's associated with the 17th of Tammuz. So it's exactly 3 weeks before the 9th of Av, and those 3 weeks is called the 3 weeks. It's a time of increasing mourning. When someone dies, God forbid, the mourning is most severe right when the person dies, and then we have Shiva, and then after Shiva, Shloshim, 30 days, then you have 12 months of mourning for a parent, and the mourning gradually decreases in severity. When it comes to leading up to Tisha B'Av, it's the opposite. We start with a period of 3 weeks where we don't have weddings and don't make big new purchases, and then we have the 9 days when we refrain from eating meat and drinking wine, and then we have the week of Tisha B'Av, even more so, and we culminating Tisha B'Av itself, where the height of that morning. So that's Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, and then Asar B'Tevet, the 10th of Tevet, is the comparable day. It's when the Babylonians besieged Jerusalem before the destruction of the first temple. So it's another day of association with the destruction of the temple. This one, it's commemorating an event that happened leading up to the destruction of the first temple. So 10th of Tevet, 17th of Tammuz, 9th of Av, these are all temple destruction related fasts. So too Tzom Gedalia. Tzom Gedalia is the 3rd day of Tishrei. It's the day immediately after Rosh Hashanah. And this commemorates the assassination of Gedalia. Gedalia, when the Babylonians destroyed the temple, they put Gedalia, a Jewish guy, in charge, as like a governor to rule over the kingdom. And he was seen by a number of sort of Jewish zealots as being a collaborator, and he was assassinated. And once he was assassinated, then the Babylonians came back and did even worse. So it's a sort of a self-destructive zealotry that led to things being even worse. He was seen as being, he wasn't militant enough, and so he was seen as being, he was understood to be a traitor, a collaborator. So that's also a fast. And then we have Tanya Esther, the day before Purim, which I'm not exactly sure what that fast is about. It's maybe it's commemorating the fast that Esther herself, 3-day fast that Esther fasted, before she went to Achashverosh, if you recall from the scroll of Esther. That didn't happen on this time of year, but maybe that's why we fast, or maybe that's actually the day before Purim is the day when we actually fought in the Purim story, so maybe it's sort of a time of danger. It's the sort of the anxiety, the negative, the anxiety inherent in the story, the negative parts of the story. We kind of, it's a dark story in many ways. It doesn't have such a happy ending. It doesn't have an unambiguously happy ending, and so on Purim we rejoice, but all the negative parts get channeled into the day before Purim when we fast. That's Tanya Esther. All of these fasts, other than Tisha B'Av, are only daytime fasts. So Tisha B'Av, like Yom Kippur, is a 25-hour fast, but 17th of Tammuz, 10th of Tevet, Tanya Esther, and Tzom Gedalia, fast of Gedalia, these are daytime fasts. They begin just before in the morning as it gets light, and they end when it gets dark. So these fasts are vary greatly in length. 17th of Tammuz is pretty long because sunrise in Tammuz could be 4 o'clock in the morning, and it doesn't get dark until it could be 9 o'clock at night, 9:15. That's a pretty long fast. Asar B'Tevet, 10th of Tevet, is a pretty short fast. Sunrise could be, the daylight could begin at 6 o'clock or 5:30, and it could be dark by 5 o'clock at night. So it's a much shorter fast. So that's the mnemonic. So there's the black and the white, that's Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. There's the long and the short, that's Shiva Asar B'Tammuz and Asar B'Tevet. And there's the man and the woman, that's Tzom Gedalia and Tanya Esther. Okay, those are the 6 fast days in the Jewish calendar.
Isn't there a fast if you're a firstborn?
That's Tanya B'Korim. That's number 5 on this list. We skipped that one. That has nothing to do with the mourning of the destruction of the temple. This is a fast that commemorates the fact that our firstborn were spared when the Egyptian firstborns were killed in the 10th plague. And so we fast on the day before Pesach. But because nobody wants to fast the day before, that's a terrible idea to fast the day before Pesach, we have a way out of it. The way out of it is we convene a siyum. A siyum is actually there's any other sudat mitzvah, any meal that it's a mitzvah to partake in overrides the custom of the firstborn fasting on Erev Pesach. So if there's a bris, for example, a circumcision feast on the day before Pesach, so you can just go to the bris and you're good to go. But you can't always provide for that. So more commonly, we have a siyum feast, a feast celebrating the completion of a significant Torah study, and completing a tractate of Talmud or an order of Mishnah or some other significant Torah learning accomplishment, and you finish that, you complete that, and there's a special prayer that's recited, a thanksgiving that I've been able to finish this accomplishment in Torah study, and then you have a festive meal, and therefore everyone who's there is allowed to eat, and once you break the fast, in that way there's no reason to fast the rest of the day. So if you're firstborn, you can fast that way. The firstborn for this instance is the firstborn of the, I think mother or father, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So we can look at that. I don't recall.
And that's,
Yeah, I think the firstborn of the mother, yes.
and it's only male, right?
It's unclear. It's more common for men to do this. That's also there. There are some positions that women also should, if they are firstborns, they should also fast or go to the siyum to get out of it. But I think it's less common. So now that hasn't been a major agenda of Jewish feminism for women to fast. Everyone wants, everyone wants synagogue honors. Nobody wants to fast on Erev Pesach. That was a joke. Okay? So that's a fast that really, if you really shouldn't fast on that day. It's really. There's one year, I went with my family to visit cousins, and so the day before Pesach, I wasn't in shul in synagogue in the morning at this siyum, at this festive completion ceremony. Instead, I was at the airport, flying to my cousins, and therefore I fasted that whole day, and it was not a good way to go into Pesach. The other difference between Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av have the 25-hour fast, and they have all of the five restrictions. The others are only daytime fasts, and the only things prohibited are eating and drinking. So you can do everything else that way. Okay.
Also, Yom Kippur is the only one that overrides Shabbos, right?
Yom Kippur is the only one that can occur on Shabbat. And so it is a Shabbat, but you don't have your Shabbat meals if Shabbat is also Yom Kippur. The others, they never occur on Shabbat because of the way the calendar is designed, or if they do occur on Shabbat, like 17th of Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, were they to occur on Shabbat, the fast gets pushed off one day. So we would observe the 8th.
Forward or backwards?
Forward. I don't know. We observe them on, instead of the 17th and the 9th, it's the 18th and the 10th.
Okay, gotcha.
Tanya Esther gets pushed, depending on when it occurs. If Purim is on if Purim is on a Sunday, we can't fast Tanya on Shabbat, Tanya Esther, and we can't push it to Sunday because that's Purim, and we can't fast on Friday because Friday needs your energy because you're cooking for Shabbat, and so the fast is pushed back to Thursday. So there are years when Tanya Esther is observed on Thursday, and Purim is observed on Sunday. Yes, that occurred in
That was last year.
1998. Was like that. Maybe other years too.
I remember that.
I remember that because I know where I was. That I was at in high school. I went to some place. It was Tanya Esther. I wasn't eating. It was cake. I didn't eat it. It was a whole, whatever. Okay.
No, I meant I was saying I remember that. It's a joke.
Yes, I
Of
understand.
course, I don't remember.
Well, it's unusual that I look at it. That was the last time it happened. I just know it happened. 1998, okay, please don't make that into it. Anything else about the fast days? I just say other thing, every year, leading up, in leading up to these fast days, I get a lot of calls from, or emails from, like that's when I find out all the pregnant women who are still like very early in their pregnancy, and other people know that they start fasting, so that all of these fast days, like we're not supposed to be fasting if it's going to harm our health. Yom Kippur, if it's possible, we try to minimize the violation of fast, like, say like ask your doctor if you have, a cheekful of Gatorade every 6 minutes for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon, such that you consume 40 or 50 ounces of liquid. Is that going to be enough to, and if they say yes, then the rabbinic fast days are much more lenient, and if somebody has the flu or a sinus infection, just don't fast those days if it's hardship.
And what about if someone takes medications like every day?
Medication is not food. You can take medication. If the medication has to be taken with food, then you talk to your doctor about it. If it's important, then you should. Depends on what the issue is. If it's if you skip a day of the medication and you I don't know, you get like an itchy head, like whatever it is, or like maybe some pimples or something, like you can skip the medication. If it's something serious that it's that your health really depends on, and skipping for a day would be problematic, then you should eat and take the medicine. That's the basic answer. So just one other thing, just to draw your attention to again. So in addition to last time we talked about the period of the Omer, between Pesach and Shavuot as a time without weddings and sort of semi-mourning. We also have the 3 weeks between the 17th of Tammuz and the 9th of Av as a time of even more semi-mourning. And so that leaves us with, let's say, at least the 33 days, the first, a bunch of weeks when we don't have weddings in that Jewish calendar, maybe no concerts, and so we have to really, enjoy things when we can, I'll put it that way. Like have the wedding, be happy when we can. Okay. I think we'll pause here for now. The next topic is about keeping kosher. That's a whole other big area to discuss, and I think so. We'll sort of start there on our own, and I also in the coming months we've met like every week for a bunch of weeks. That's gonna have to my track record is going to be interrupted, but I can do next Monday. I can do next Tuesday. Tuesday the 1st I can do, but there are going to be a couple of Tuesdays in March that I can't do, and April as well. So let's meet next Tuesday. We'll start kashrut, and
I've been through all of that.
you've been to all of them.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
I mean, no, I'm just wondering, like, should I don't mind.
It's totally up to you. It's totally up to you. It's totally up to you. If you enjoy it, and you're welcome to come. And
I think
I try to say different things this year. No, I'm just kidding.
no.
But if you
the holidays are good for you,
Good.
because it's like,
good,
especially because they're like with Pesach coming up.
it's totally up to you. It's totally up to you. If as long as it's still interesting for you, please come. But if it's not, then don't. Okay.
Yeah. Just wondering if you,
Of course not.